Hi, welcome back to Talk About the Passion. I'm your host, Christian Campagna. It's been a while since I've released an episode of the podcast. Life happens, you know how it is. Here we are again, though. I'm ready to dig back into this and release some new episodes. And as always, if you want to be on an episode, let me know. I'm always open to cool ideas. The last episode of this was in November of 2022, so it's been a bit. I have some cool ones lined up with some great people. I'm excited to start this up again. For this one, though, I want to talk about music and its relation to traveling. So yeah, here's that. Listening to music while traveling, whether it's flying, by train, or what I'm going to talk about most, driving, is an important thing to me. I remember some of my first multi-day drives either across the country or around the East Coast. I would spend days before leaving gathering the right tapes and then later on CDs and nowadays playlists. All of these formats had their job, and even before the cassette was the 8-track tape. If you're a friend of mine, and you're probably aware of my love for the Pacific Coast Highway in California. For well over a decade now, I've been up and down it dozens of times, and as time goes by, I've put playlists together for it. Some songs have been removed for whatever reason, and many added. That playlist is simply called PCH. It has 90 songs and just over 6.5 hours long. Then there was New PCH, which clocks in at well over 11 hours and includes 148 songs. Then there's been November 2, DRVN, and many others, and most of them have overlapping songs in them. I mean, Gerry Rafferty's Right Down the Line is one of the constants, as well as Guilt and the Like by Mouth of the Architect, a song you've probably never heard but should. It sounds nothing like Gerry Rafferty, FYI. Some of these songs are on these because they're just literally songs about driving. For instance, every road mix should probably have the Grateful Dead's Going Down the Road Feeling Bad on it. Even if you don't like the Dead, it should be on there. Route 66 is another good one to have on there. I like, Nat King Cole's version was cool. Then another favorite is Depeche Mode. Did it on the Music for the Masses record. A good amount of songs are chosen because maybe at one point or another, I wasn't listening to one of these playlists and heard another song and added it to the playlist because it fit perfect that day. Some of the early trips on this road were during a nice period in my life, I guess around 2009, and I think a good amount of these are from that time period. Stuff like Interpol's Rest My Chemistry, Radiohead's The Bends, Mars Volta's The Widow, which I heard for the first time at a record store in San Luis Obispo. Did you know Flea out of Red Hot Chili Peppers plays trumpet on that song? Did you know also that Flea is the least insufferable member of the Red Hot Chili Peppers? I mean, we all know who the top guy is in that group. I guess now that I think of it, the three guys in the band that aren't the one who sings are all fine. There's a funny clip you can find on YouTube with two of my favorite funny people ever, Tom Sharpling, The Best Show, and Dave Hill. And they're talking about the band, and Tom says they would be a perfectly fine band if they were just an instrumental band. That's a funny take and true, I guess, although I do like their first few records. Anyway, stupid lyrics I'm not. I mean, I listen to AC/DC almost every day, and they're not exactly, Nick Cave level lyricists. Those are comfort songs that bring me back to a particular brief but good time in my life. Anyway, yeah, The Widow. Amazing song. Seek it out if you want. I don't even particularly care for the Mars Volta either way. Great, talented band, but I never dove too deep into their stuff. Weird how that happens sometimes. You like one song from a band and that's it. Then you never listen to any more of their stuff. Who else would fall into that? I don't know. Anyway, I recently was given a bunch of old photographs of my family from the 70s, most from when we first moved to California in 1976. Some of these pics I was able to do some research and figure out like the exact date of my first Dodgers game from a picture of the scoreboard. I don't remember the date now, but it was against the Phillies, and Bill Buckner was on the Dodgers at the time. Big hero in the Boston Red Sox world. I knew my dad had taken my brother and I up north in California a couple of times, but couldn't remember where we went. Thanks to these pictures, though, I discovered a picture of me sitting on a fence on the Pacific Coast Highway in Big Sur. I've stopped at the exact same spot numerous times as an adult, so it was neat to see myself as a fat 12-year-old kid there. Now one of my favorite places to visit. The one thing I do remember about these trips and that time in general was my dad had a limited number of 8-track tapes in the car. I mean, these things weren't small, and granted, he drove a big Cadillac, and no, he didn't. It wasn't filled with them like cars of mine would be, years later with cassettes, mostly not in their cases or in the wrong case. Compact discs, which I still have in my car to this day. Kids nowadays will never know the pain of putting, a Voivod CD in a Public Enemy CD case, on top of a Sonic Youth CD that's already in there. And then, you lose that CD on the bottom forever. A rookie mistake when cleaning out your car to rotate CDs out was not opening them to see if the correct one was in the case. I'm still living that nightmare right now, sadly, as a 55-year-old man. I know most of you have moved forward in your lives, so, just feel good that you're not me. The ones that my dad had in the car were these: Steely Dan Asia, Doobie Brothers Minute by Minute, that self-titled Ricky Lee Jones one with Chuck E. in Love. I bought her autobiography a while back and I haven't read it. Not 100% why I even bought that. I'm more of a casual fan and, couldn't even tell you how that Chuck E. in Love song goes at this point, aside from the chorus, which is Chuck E. in Love. If I get around to reading it, I'll let you guys know how it is. This track tracks perfectly for 1979 or so, when I guess this would have been. I like the Doobie Brothers record enough, but I still listen to Steely Dan Asia to this day. And it's not on Asia, but if you're wondering, I have driven west on Sunset while playing Babylon Sisters on more than one occasion. So, traveling as a teenager to visit my dad in California every summer, I would always have a number of cassettes with me to listen to in my Walkman. And at one point started having the same few artists and songs on those tapes. When I think of that now, the idea of throwing a bunch of cassette tapes in a carry-on bag while flying sounds like a fucking nightmare. Fast forward to my 20s, in the early 90s, when I got into traveling by train. Music and rail travel go hand in hand, and obviously have a long tradition in folk and country music. And, a lot of times the songs about trains or the railroad would use like a syncopated beat that, would mimic the sound of train wheels over train tracks. And that's a perfect example of, in my opinion, is the basis or number one rule of a straight up good road song. The song literally sounds like you're moving forward. If you don't know the aforementioned Going Down the Road Feeling Bad, a great example would be something like, or another good example would be, L.A. Woman by the Doors, Golden Earring, Radar Love, Chuck Berry, No Particular Place to Go, or, any fucking Chuck Berry song, really. And then these, obviously ones like On the Road Again by Willie Nelson and the I've Been Everywhere, Johnny Cash song. Leonard Skinner's version of Call Me the Breeze. And while we're at it, how about The Eagles Already Gone? This is like the textbook road trip mixtape music. Also, and I know people hate the Eagles, but that song Already Gone, let's talk about that. It opens their album On the Border. And it always makes me laugh because of the first verse. The song is sung by Glenn Frey, the smoother of the vocalists from the Eagles. Some might say he's the Art Garfunkel to Don Henley's Paul Simon. Maybe the Paul Stanley to Henley's Gene Simmons. He's the Jeff Hanneman to Don Henley's... No. Anyway, this song, the classic I'm Out of Here Lady, in the tradition of the Bad Brains Sailing On, or maybe the, I'd Rather Go Blind by Etta James. Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. So the first verse of the Eagles song, it goes like this. Well, I heard some people talking just the other day, and they said you were going to put me on a shelf. But let me tell you, I got some news for you, and you'll soon find out it's true, and then you'll have to eat your lunch all by yourself. This is the threat you get when you break Glenn Frey's heart. You have to eat lunch by yourself. Is that a bad thing? Who doesn't like to eat lunch alone? Quicksand doesn't. Another amazing song by an amazing band, Dine Alone. Also, the way he delivers that, I got some news for you. Like, oh, okay, Grandpa, who even says that? I got some news for you, buddy. I know Glenn Frey didn't write these lyrics as the Eagles used some outside songwriters, and the fellow who wrote this one, Jack Temchin, also wrote their songs Peaceful, Easy Feeling, which I would gather is probably at the top of the list when it comes to why you might dislike the Eagles. With the others being Don Henley's voice, Don Henley's face, probably some other shit. Or because, the Big Lebowski. That song, I wanted to look the lyrics up for it and ended up doing more research on an Eagles song than I needed to do. And now that I have this information in my head, I feel the need to share it with you. So the background to Peaceful, Easy Feeling you never knew you needed to know about. Living in San Diego and performing in the folk music circuit, Jack Temchin was rooming in a communal-type home with other musicians when inspiration for completing this song hit. We'd sit in front of the picture window and watch the beautiful girls on the bus stop bench and fall in love with them until their bus came. We talked in those days about how love never seems to show up until you stop looking for it. But as young guys, we were unable to stop looking for love even for one day. So just picked a bunch of fucking guys with mustaches, with hard-ons, 24 hours a day, sitting on a porch in San Diego. It's lovely. During a trip to Old Town San Diego State Historic Park, Temchin saw a girl with turquoise earrings against her dark skin, which he incorporated into the song. I guess I was trying to distill the beauty of every girl I saw into the words on paper, and then into a song, he later stated. He later completed the song's third verse in the parking lot of the Der Wiener Schnitzel fast food establishment in San Diego. Wait, what? So, this song is essentially about being a horny dude spying on women, and after finding inspiration hiding in the bushes in Old Town San Diego Historic Park, the song is finished in a, wait for it, parking lot of a fast food hot dog chain? That can't be real, is it? Here I was, and I imagine you right now, all these years, thinking Peaceful, Easy Feeling was about some, hippie sitting in a fucking hammock, smoking a joint with, long blonde hair with some green tea. And nope, it's about being a creep. And like you, I really only could probably sing the line because I get a peaceful, easy feeling, because I thought I'd look up the lyrics. And to close out our little side journey into the history of the Eagles lyrics, I'll share the first verse of the song, which then we can both throw up in our mouths together. So here's that. I like the way your sparkling earrings lay against your skin so brown, and I want to sleep with you in the desert night with a billion stars all around. Jeez, guy. Actually, I'm not done with the Eagles yet. After the breakup of the band, Glenn Frey took the creep Temchin with him, who went on to write You Belong to the City, which is it's a good fucking song. Solid 80s song. He also wrote Smuggler's Blues, which, like the previous song, were both inspired by Miami Vice and cocaine. You know, these guys made the jump from weed to Quaaludes to coke seem effortless, I have to say. Tell me your favorite Glenn Frey song in the comments section. Just kidding. Next episode, we're going to be doing a deep dive into Supertramp's Goodbye Stranger, so just pay attention. The other thing about this Jack Temchin guy, I needed more information on him, and you do as well. I started with a Google image search of him to see just what the hell this creep looks like. And he's got that vibe, especially pictures of him in the 70s. He's the guy with the curly black hair and beard who shows up at the party and, like, you know, offers women back rubs, probably has a thumb ring, you know. Later on, he had what looks like what a guy playing Ernest Hemingway in a movie would look like. After doing this image search, I fell down a pretty deep Jack Temchin rabbit hole. I'm sad to admit that to you. I found myself on the website jacktempchin.com, which then led me to a merchandise website called Peaceful Easy Feeling Shop. And you can find this too. It's literally peacefuleasyfeelingshop.com, and I'm not getting paid for advertising, although I should, because when's the last time someone's uttered Jack Temchin's name? You know, it wasn't like, you know, someone filling out a restraining order. So they have a bunch of shirts that literally just, and hats that just say Peaceful Easy Feeling on them, which also on the main page is a giant video that says, check out Jack's Beach Jams, with a picture of him on a bench on the ocean with an acoustic guitar. I'm not going to click on that video, but I mean, you could, you know, check it out and let us all know how it is. Anyway, if I had the option of eating lunch with Glenn Frey or eating by myself, I'm going to probably eat by myself every time. And this is a good segue into the next part. Driving alone with music versus driving with another person, or even worse, more than one person. Look, I like to hang with my friends and drive places in cars, and at this point in our lives, through music is a small part of that experience. Mainly, I think, because, you know, we usually haven't seen each other in a few months and want to catch up, which you can't do if the, you know, driver is blasting, you know, fucking Five Magics by Megadeth, or, you know, Vicar in a Tutu by the Smiths. In our teen years and 20s, driving around and playing music at ridiculously loud volumes while smoking, you know, pin bars full of Colombian gold was a normal practice. Nowadays, though, music is best enjoyed in the car by yourself, and secondly with another person. The danger you face, though, when, you know, with you're another person in the car, is when you want the other person to hear a particular song, and when that one line comes up or that one hook is about to happen and the other person just starts talking, you know, it ruins your life for that second. Alone, you never get that. On the other hand, like I said at the beginning of this, some songs may be tied to a particular trip you made with a time or with a person significant in your life, and now this song is associated with them forever. That being good, you know, can be a good and bad thing, as you know. This might sound like a cold thing to say, but, you know, sometimes you just have to never play anyone some of your favorite songs, just in case, you know, they're suddenly not in your life anymore, and that song will, you know, then make you sad forever. You know, like the lady eating lunch all by herself because of fucking Glenn Frey told her to take a hike. Looking back at the mixtapes I played on the train in my 20s, it was similar stuff, but newer and mostly rooted in punk rock or alternative music. Boston's Moving Targets, one of my favorite bands of all time. I interviewed Ken on here. And they're recording a record with Jay Robbins right now, which is pretty exciting. Because if you've seen the Moving Targets in the last few years, the new lineup Ken has with these two fellas from Canada, they're amazing. They're really good. Anyway, at the time they released two records after the Perfect Burning and Water album. One was called Brave Noise and the other one was called Fall, which came from the same session. You know, and I'll humble brag with this little side note about Moving Targets, which I maybe talked about in the intro to his interview. My brother and I became friendly with Kenny and Chuck Freeman, the bass player. At one point, they gave us a tape that had all of the songs that would become those two records, and I wore that thing out, like, you know, before either of those records even came out. Brave Noise finally came out in 89, but the Fall record wasn't out until 1991. And around that same era, there's a live at WERS set that I had a tape of that we used to just listen to all the time. And they actually released some of that on there's a Moving Targets sort of like rarities, B-sides type thing. Well, I don't know, B-sides, they never really had singles, but anyway. So the songs on these two records had, this feeling of like movement, like daydreaming out of a car window in the spring, driving around Gloucester and Ipswich, Mass, which was where the Targets were from, actually. Other important ones for me on the train were from DC band Soulside. Maybe because I have a vivid memory of the slow crawl into, Chicago with the track A Love Supreme, providing, a perfect soundtrack as my head, fogged up the window, drifting in and out of sleep. Most of their record Hot Bodygram is like this. The band, the musicians playing some seriously tight grooves that hit some hypnotic places that are, perfect for movement and zoning out at, orange lights passing by your face. You could pick anything from that record for a mixtape for your road trip and you'd be happy. What Do You Know About That is also a perfect example. The Discord released compact disc that had all of their stuff from Discord called Soon Come Happy has a picture of a train on the cover. I think it's a train or part of a train or something. One of my favorite train and music synchronicity situations I experienced, though, was in February of 1990. I took a train from Boston to San Francisco to see the Grateful Dead for their annual Mardi Gras / Chinese New Year's show. My best friend at the time, Derek, was flying out and meeting me there. Along with the mostly different mixtapes and live Dead tapes, I had a copy of Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska. I enjoyed the record quite a bit at that time and brought it because of that. Of course, when I discovered the train would be going through Nebraska, I held off until then to play it. Side note, if you ever want to take a nice train ride, the California Zephyr, which runs from Chicago through Nebraska, you see the Rockies, Salt Lake City, and all sorts of amazing places. It's a good train. And it's the train routes. Train travel's not for everyone, but, that route, the route from, Massachusetts to San Francisco was, I think, like 51 hours or something. And, in the first train you take from here, anyways, the Lakeshore Limited, which runs from Boston to Chicago, and it's probably 20 hours. But, you're stuck on a train for a long time, which some people can't do that. A lot of times you really just want to die. Where was I? Oh, yeah, Nebraska. So I put this one on late at night, shooting through the plains of Nebraska in the viewing car, which is, basically is all windows and usually barely populated after, say, 10 p.m. I barely sleep on train rides, and this one was no exception. I hung out mostly here and in the dining car. This record is the perfect soundtrack for this scenario. A barely lit train car with you, Bruce, and an acoustic guitar. I'm sorry, I mean Bruce Springsteen. There's people who refer to artists just by their first name. Man, I was listening to the song and Cure song, and Robert really spoke to me. I don't want to be that guy, but I guess for this I kind of have to be. There was lightning in the distance for long periods of time, and that was just amazing to watch. And if you're familiar with that record, it really sounds like you're sitting in a room with him and he's playing those songs, sitting in a chair in front of you. I drove across the country a few times, well, 6.5 times to be exact. And one time I flew back, aside from the one time I went a little more north through Kansas, Colorado, Utah, Nevada. Never say Nevada to someone from, is that what it is? Don't say Nevada, say Nevada. And Oregon, not Oregon. I always went through Oklahoma, the top of Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. This route you can jump on and off Route 66 from, Interstate 40, which is essentially replaced part of 66. It's obviously the better option to take 66, as it's, always is. If you have the time to take roads like that. There's a great book about this called Blue Highways, A Journey into America, by William Least Heat, something like that. He talks a lot about the people you meet along the way that are either, interesting or not interesting or anything spectacular. But like myself, I can always find something, interesting in a stranger. Not that I'm, traveling back roads every time I travel and, stopping in a general store so I can hear some clerk spin a yarn about some old barn they just restored. However, I do tend to talk to strangers more often than not, especially when I'm traveling alone. Sometimes it's exciting to realize you haven't spoken to another person for 2 days. It's a neat feeling. Check it out. I've also forgotten to talk about the other type of traveling mixed, and that's the airplane playlist. Most of the ones I've had in the last decade or so have been laid-back affairs, mostly designed for me personally, as I tend to drift in and out of sleep on an airplane. Every time I fly, I bring like a book, a magazine, a fucking tablet, a laptop, snacks, and probably 99% of the time I don't use any of them and just end up with my head against the window staring at nothing. The one constant on the flying playlist is it always starts with Tony Bennett's Fly Me to the Moon.
I'll translate as I go along. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars.
Depending what you may or not have put into your blood system in the airport before you're boarded, may send you off to sleep before the song even hits the second verse, if you know what I'm saying. In a perfect scenario, that's the top one you want, in my opinion. Unless you need to work on spreadsheets or whatever. These playlists for me always include a good amount of like Radiohead for whatever reason always sound perfect for flying. Some people dislike Radiohead or want to call them overrated, which is generally my least favorite music discussion type. That something's overrated. This has never made sense to me. This artist is enjoyed by too many people. What? They should only be allowed to have X number of fans. It's easiest just to say you don't like something. If you think it's overrated, you either just don't understand it or you're one of those curmudgeonly, edgy types who, needs to be the contrarian when people are talking about music. I know these guys well. I play one on the internet all the time. Anyway, enough about that. Radiohead's song Sail to the Moon is a perfect example of a song that makes you feel as if you're floating. The rest of these mixes usually consists of music that's perfect to drift in and out of sleep, like the Cocteau Twins, Sonic Youth, Sister and Evil, especially, Library Tapes, which is a fucking terrible name for a band, Mogwai. And the one crucial thing to remember, and like an amateur, I did this on my last flight to Seattle in November of 2023. I didn't download the music to my phone. And, most streaming services allow you to download a certain amount of music to your phone. Most of us don't do this since everything is streaming from a cloud now, and we're usually in reach of, Wi-Fi. Well, if you're in the air and not paying for Wi-Fi, the $15 an hour or whatever, only the downloaded music on your phone will play. This past trip, I literally only had the Tony Bennett song downloaded from that playlist. So I wrapped the phone, put it away, and did the sociopath airline passenger thing I like to do. Nothing, just stare out the window or straight ahead of me. No music, no magazine. 6 hours straight. Try it out sometime. Kids nowadays are calling this raw dogging a flight, which I think has become a meme. There's nothing sacred anymore. The original version, of not having music downloaded to your phone, that was, much worse, having a Walkman and forgetting to bring batteries, especially for one of those people who didn't use Duracell or Energizer. Like, who's buying, those fucking generic CVS batteries you're on? The preparation for these, non-flying trips used to start with getting all the CDs together in multiple books. Once CD burners became a thing, you could make your own mixtapes on CD now, which was cool. And, some players could play MP3 files off of a disc, and you could have a long-ass mix. I can't remember how much time you could fit on those. This playlist is, 3 or 4 hours, I think. And now streaming services allow you to make, playlists as long as a fucking day is long. I like these ridiculously long playlists myself. Lately, that's all I have. Some 10 hours long, some 26. If you're out for a week or so and keep, going back to it, you generally won't hear the same things over and over. So that's one recommendation I can give you. Have a trip planned by yourself 6 months from now. Start building a playlist over, 6 months, adding a few songs in a day with whatever streaming service you use, or if you have the stuff downloaded. If you're going with someone else, a lot of the services have a collaborative playlist option, so you can both, add songs to it over, time. The only thing with that, though, you run the risk of, the other person putting something on there you'd never listen to in a million years. Like, you're driving along and all of a sudden your Blue Oyster Cult song is followed by a fucking They Might Be Giants song, imagine. Get out, that's what I would say. And then, of course, I'd drive around the block and pick them up, standing there with their suitcase and let them know that, that was strike one to get in the back. Okay, let's wrap this up. This is, a subject I can talk about for hours, and I don't even think I actually talked about this subject really here. But anyway, who wants to hear that? Music and traveling, whether it's travel for vacation or commuting to work, it's an important thing that keeps most of us sane. I'm traveling west in a few weeks, and I've already been putting a long playlist to shuffle for the week I'm out there. I've already started one, added 40 songs or so, deleted the entire thing and started over, sort of like this right here. I was putting this episode together. Right now, it is February 26th, 2025. I was putting this episode together in August of 2024. I've added, ideas to talk about here and there, and then just decided I needed to record this and just get it out of the way so I can stop doing things like I did 2 weeks ago, where I just texted myself Allman Brothers to remind myself, hey, you should talk about the Allman Brothers on that thing. You didn't even talk about them. And, they probably have a fucking dozen songs that, should be on any travel mix, like, Ramblin' Man, Southbound, Blue Sky. Okay, I'm not going to list Allman Brothers songs. Speaking of rambling, this has been a pretty big rambling session, but I also wanted to start this podcast up and just kind of get back into the swing of this, because it's been a while, and I'm putting together a second one right after this, and then I'm going to hopefully start having some people on here. If you follow me on social media, I'd love to hear what you think are essential travel songs. I have a dedicated Instagram page for this podcast that I currently am unable to access because I'm a fucking idiot. But once I figure that out, I'll start linking that again on here. But I do mostly post on Instagram under the name Caffeine and Cookies, all one word. And, we talk about music a lot there. And I'd love to hear your picks on this. Anyway, thank you for listening, and we will see you soon.